All right, welcome back. So let's talk about connecting to PyCharm. So how do you write code on your computer and then transfer that code to that computer, the robot? And then how do you from your computer say run, and then that computer will run it. So how do you do that? So this lecture is kind of given in class, and what we do in class is we let people work individually. So we kind of have a special project for them to work individually on. And then in the third lecture, they work as a team on the real project, right? So here's the starting code that we give you. So this is called Intro to EV3, which people work on individually in this one. And then this one's called EV3 Dev Curriculum. That's the one that you eventually work on as a team. So what we're going to do is we're going to cheat, right? So we are going to actually do the content that's in this slide deck, the second videos, the second day's lecture, but we're going to use the repository from the final one, right? Because since you are individual and you're not part of a team, you may as well just jump to the real final project. So I'm going to send you these 3 links to these 3 slide decks. Go ahead and click on the third slide deck, checking out your team Git repository. And what I want you to do is I want you to do the same process you always do, but with this starting code. So it's github.com robotics EV3 dev curriculum. So go to this URL, make a fork of it, and then clone your fork. You know how to do those steps, so I'm not going to show them to you. But when you get them done, it should open up and look like this. So pause the video, make those things happen. So this is the project that you're going to get. That's going to be your starting code for all the things you do with this robot. You can see that it's got a couple of different folders in it. One's called Assets, Examples, Libs. You'll notice how libs is blue for me. That's because I've already done this step, but do a right click and mark directory as sources root. And then there's a place for you to put your project whenever you're ready to make your project for this class. And then there's the sandboxes. The sandboxes are called M1. I renamed mine to my username, FisherDS. M2, M3, M4. To be honest, for you and source, you can delete M2, M3, and M4. And source, by the way, it's just an original copy of what was in all the M's, right? So what we do is we give every person their independent copy of the starting code. But since you're one person, you can delete M2, M3, M4. You don't have a member 2, a member 3, a member 4. And then if you like, you can rename yours to your username, but that's completely optional. Another thing I'll say is, make sure that you occasionally commit it. Sorry, it's off the screen there, but it says commit up at the top here once you kind of make those changes. You don't have to, but you may as well. If you look inside your M1, you'll see that there's 4 different units. And so we're going to be going through a unit on motors. That's the first one. Digital inputs is second. MQTT is third. And then analog sensors is fourth. So you're going to be going through the M's in here as part of this course. Another thing that you're going to be doing is there's also a libs area here. This libs area has code that's available that's kind of shared between the whole project team. But since you're a one-person project team, that doesn't matter much to you. So it's basically just it's a file that you can use in any of your other files. So it's kind of like Rose Graphics, except for it's in one place that everybody can share and use. What you're going to do in here is you're going to make a class called Snatcher3, and you're going to be building up that class. By the way, you're also going to be using a thing called MQTT remote method calls. Inside of this, there's a bunch of comments, but then it's got your Lego number. You should just put whatever your Lego number is. So mine's 18, so I'd put 18 there. To be honest, that's not critically important, but you may as well do it, right? And then what you want to do is you want to set your MQTT broker. Now you can see that this code has as the default for communication using MQTT, it has a default here of Mosquito, CSSE Rolls Holman. This only works if you're on campus. So just kind of as a heads up, that only works if you're on campus. So I'll send out an email for what I want you to change that to, because if you're not on campus, you should use a more generic public one, and I'll send you an email on what that is. All right, I was just kind of going through here to show you some of the files. So what we want to do is we want to get you connected to your robot. So how do we do that? So let's follow along with the slides, just because that'll make the most sense. And so what I want you to do is I want you to kind of look at these slides in detail, but I'm going to kind of talk about them as we go. So there's some things in here that say, you know, power is important. Remind you how to turn your EV3 back on. Mine's still on. Some of the things that it'll talk about in here that will be important to you is the Wi-Fi network. So if you're on Rolls-Hulman campus, it'll just auto-connect to the Wi-Fi network. Assuming that you're not on campus, you're going to have to actually connect to your network. So you're going to have to use the menu to go to wireless and networks, and then Wi-Fi, and then it should scan for open networks. You'll have to select your network from the list here. Once you've selected your network from the list, I recommend you go down to where it says network connection. I'd actually go ahead and do that now. And I would check the box for connect automatically, and then the box for connect. You will have to type in your password to your wireless router using 4 buttons. It's a giant pain, but you can totally do it. Once you do that, it'll give you an IP address. The IP address shows up in the upper right-hand corner, or sorry, upper left-hand corner up here, and that IP address is going to be really important for connecting your computer to your robot. There's some information here about how you disconnect and reconnect if you have problems. If you also continue to have problems, I recommend rebooting your robot. It's kind of your next level of if you have problems. One thing I'll say about working with real hardware is things will go wrong, right? You're working with real hardware, you're not just working with pixels on the screen. And your goal, your job, is to become a master at like dealing with the eccentricities of a robot. If you take it as kind of like a challenge of your goal is to figure out how to make it work well, it's a lot more fun than just complaining about it's like, oh, I did this and it didn't work. It's like, well, you know, we're doing robots here. We're not just doing pixels. All right, my little rant there. So we need 2 things. We need to be able to transfer our files from our computer onto that computer. And we need to be able to say run from this computer to make that computer run. So those are kind of the 2 things we need. And PyCharm helps us do it. In this slide deck, we have students download this starting code. You're going to never use the starting code. Just don't even mess with it. We're jumping to give you the final one. So this is just kind of like a little practice thing that we do in class. The reason we do it in class is that they're going to work on a team, but on this day they work individual. Because that's different, we give them 2 different projects. You don't have to even worry about it, right? So I'm going to skip over some of these things, and I'm going to come to this one right here. Adding a remote server. So within PyCharm, choose File Settings. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my File Settings. And it opens up a window that looks like this. Expand where it says Build, Deploy, Execute. Expand where it says Deployment. And you'll see that there's only options. I actually wanted to click on my deployment. And what you're going to do is you're going to make a deployment target. So right here it says EV3. I've already done it. I'm going to click on delete so that I can do it again, right? So now I'm starting with nothing. Oh, by the way, and so now we're going to connect to our robot here. Before I get into that, though, I just want to do one more quick sanity check. Click on Project, and then Project Interpreter, and make sure you have a package called PAHOMQTT and a package called Python EV3 dev. One of the earlier slide decks told you to install those, I think, but if it didn't, pause and do it now. So if you don't have them, so that's this guy and this guy, these 2, click on the plus button, which on Windows I think is up on the right. So click on the plus button and just do a search for them, right? So do a PAHO and click on this guy. And when you install it, there's a checkbox down here. Sorry, it's not quite making the screen. Make sure you install it to the site packages directory. That way it's always available to you, right? The other one was called Python-EV3 dev. which is this one right here. And so make sure you install those two things. So I just wanted to say that because I can't remember when you did that. Maybe you haven't done that yet, but do it now regardless. All right, so those are necessary for your computer. You can hit apply or OK once you're done with that step and then come back in here. The next thing we want to do is we want to connect to the EV3 robot. So I'm going to click on plus. It asks me what type of server is this. It's kind of like a server, right? And I'm going to say SFTP, which stands for Secure File Transfer Protocol. And I'm just going to call it EV3 because that's a good name. Once I'm in this area, it asks me some questions. It asks me, do I want it visible for only this project? No, I'll make it visible everywhere. What is the host IP? You just have to look at your robot and type it in. Don't look at what my screen says. Look at what your robot says. If you type in the IP address that you have here, not much is going to happen, right? Port root path, you don't need to worry about those. The username for these robots is robot. And the password is capital C, $, capital E, 120. And I recommend that you save that password, right? Now you can click on Test SFTP Connection. What it'll do is it'll try to connect to this computer. Make sure that mine's on here. And it will ask you if you want to trust it or not, right? So I've already connected to mine before, so it didn't ask me this trust connection. And then after it says trust, you'll say, yes, I trust it. Say yes, right? Then it'll actually do your test, and it should say successfully connected. If it doesn't, don't move past it until you get it to work, right? So try it a few times. Make sure the IP address is not like a 198.162. That means you're not really on the internet. But make sure that you get that step to work. Once you've got this tab done, we've got to do something in the mappings area. And by the way, these things are all covered in the slides as well, so definitely look at the slides because this video moves fast. It says like the password and things in this slide. And then in slide, the local path, you want to set it to this. I'm going to copy paste it just because I happen to have it right here. And so what is this? This is mappings. This is move files on my computer from this location. Do not edit this location. Do not make yours match mine. It will autofill it correctly. So this is where are these files on my computer, and then where do I want to put them on that computer, right? And we ask everyone to put them in /home/robot /CSSE120. And the reason we do that is then you could easily blow away that folder, and we know that everything is perfectly sandboxed in that folder. So I ask you to do it that way. Cool, and so now you can hit apply and OK. Cool. And so now we've got a connection to this computer. So it's a remote server that we can connect to. And what we can do is we can now send files over there. So for example, I could send this whole project over if I wanted. Why not? I'm going to right click on this project and say upload to EV3. It only says upload to EV3 for me because I've set that as the default. If you go back into settings, by the way, you can see under mappings it says use this server as default. It was already checked for me. Maybe you needed to check that box. But whenever I right click here, it says upload to EV3. What this will do is this will take everything that's in this project, which is a lot of files, and it will upload all of them one at a time over to my robot. And you can see that it's making progress down here. Now earlier I recommended that you delete this M2, M3, M4, and SRC folder. And I kind of wish that I had now because there's a lot of files in here, and it's making this take longer because I did not delete the M2, M3, M4. So I should have, right? So if you haven't done the upload yet, delete those before you do it. Cool, so mine finished. It says 225 files. You might have more or less, but it's a lot of files. And I moved them from my computer over here, which is kind of cool, right, using SFTP. And so that's one of the most important things is transferring files. Now I can type on my computer and I can actually transport them over there. If you want to actually know that it worked, and we kind of have some slides in here where we're doing things a little bit differently, you need to somehow confirm the files using SSH. You can also confirm the files, though, by using Brickman. So I'm going to hit the back button here a couple times to go back to the file browser. And I can see on my file browser, so my file browser, I have to hit the dot dot. I can see I have a 120 folder, and it's got a bunch of stuff in it, right? So I can kind of see it there. But I'm also going to confirm it with SSH. Let's talk about SSH. Oh, actually, one more feature. This is optional, slide 22 here. What you can do if you would like, this is optional, is you can make it to where it automatically uploads files, which is really kind of handy. So anytime you're connected to your robot and you make a change, you can optionally go into the options here, upload change files automatically, so whenever to the server when you explicitly save it. So I like this checkbox, it saves me time. Now, if I say, apply to this, now anytime I change a file and I hit save, it's going to automatically transfer that file over. So just to kind of like do a quick test here, I'll just go into some motors or something like that. So I'll just change my name to Dave Fisher. And as soon as I hit save, like if I'm in this area and I hit Control S, you can see it says automatic upload complete. So it's kind of nice. You type something, you hit save, and it'll just transfer the file over, which is really cool. All right, great. So that is one of the two most important things that we're going to do. The other thing we're going to learn about is SSH. So let's learn about this. So click on Tools. From Tools, say Start SSH Session. When you start an SSH session, it asks you which remote host would you like to select. You can go ahead and say EV3. And what it'll do is it will actually connect a command line to your EV3, which is kind of cool, right? And so now I'm actually like, it's as if I'm typing code on this computer. And so you can type commands. Here I'll type ls, and I can see my different folders. I can see that I've got a CSSE120 folder, and inside of it, it's got these folders. You can see it follows this structure exactly. And then for me, if I go into the sandbox, I can see that I've got a Fisher DS folder because I renamed the M1 folder to be Fisher DS. And so you've got to think about this for a little bit, but these files are on your computer. They're also on that computer, right? But what you can do, which is fun, is you can actually run things from here. You will have to get good at the command line. There's some examples in here. So CDing to a folder, change directory is what that stands for, some folder name. If you want to go back to the parent, cd ... You can list what's in there with ls, or if you want to, you can say ls-lah, which is a little better. And then you can run things by saying Python space and then the file name. You also should get good at using tab to autocomplete things. So type just a couple letters, then hit tab. Control C if you want to manually stop something, and up arrow to run the last command. I would know everything on that list, right? So I'm going to go up to the parent directory, and I'm just going to go into examples just so I could run something, right? So inside examples, there's an example for like motors and digital inputs and lots of different things. I'm going to go into motors, and I'm going to notice that there's two commands on here. I'm going to run the one called drive square. You'll notice as I type there that I actually typed the word like drive. I hit tab. It auto-completed up to the underscore. And then I type the letter S, and then I hit tab again. So you type very little. And so right now, it's actually running this program over here. So even though I typed it on my computer, it's running it over here. And it's driving the 4 different legs of the square. So it's driving straight right now for the second segment, and then it's turning, and it's going to go for a little while, right? If you wanted to kill the program, you could hit Control C, but I'll warn you that if you do that, the motors will keep doing their last commands. So if your robot ever gets away from you, just pick it up. If it's going truly nuts, you can always just unplug the motors temporarily. They're in ports B and C, and that will help you out a lot. And so this is the two important tasks. One is transferring files. The other is connecting with SSH so that you can actually run things with Python in the file name. So that's really the important things. Oh, there's one additional optional thing here you can set. I do recommend these optional things. You can make it to where it doesn't ask you that question every time about like who do you want to connect to. And you can change that in the SSH terminal area. And it says deployment server, select server on every run, switch it to just be the EV3, right? Because we are only ever using the EV3. And now what you can do is if you kill this SSH connection, you can say tools, start SSH session, and it won't ask you who you want to connect to. It'll just connect to the robot, right? Great. So that is the important parts. I'll just go and kind of flip through the rest of the slides here just to look at some of these things. You can see that they tell you to do the same things that I did. They ran another example in here, which was fun, called drive input. You should try it. But it uses the input command to like ask your computer questions, which is kind of fun. You can also look at the code for how they work. Another thing you can do, which I don't recommend, is you can chmod a file so that you can run it with Brickman. You can't do it unless you do this chmod. I recommend you don't mess with it, but the information is in the slides. Cool. So that is what I want you to learn about. Oh, here is actually, I guess, the step where they install those packages. But we did this earlier. So you must install these packages in order to do this robot stuff. The next slide deck we're going to skip. It says check out your team repo. You've already checked out your team repo. And there's some things in here that we do with them to like practice working on a team. To be honest, you don't really care about any of that. Great, so this is your overview to the robot. You should now be ready to start the actual videos over the robot, which will start with drive motors. All right, you'll have questions, ask questions, but hopefully these videos will give you more information than just looking at the slide decks. All right, see you later, bye.